Well, welcome to podcast ventureLAB Chat. I'm Hugh Chow, CEO of ventureLAB. Welcome today. It's Tony. Well, maybe I will let Tony to introduce himself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Tony Chan Carusone. I've been researching integrated circuits for digital communication for over 20 years now. And a lot of that's been in academia at the University of Toronto as a faculty member there. For the last 3.5 years, I've been the Chief Technology Officer at Alphawave Semi.
Wow, you know what? Like 20 years at U of T, and now switching from teaching and researching to the actual semiconductor industry. That's a big switch. So what drove you there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things. First of all, it wasn't as dramatic a switch as you might like. Maybe it's always been my inclination, even as an academic, that I really wanted to have an impact on the real world. So I've always been a close collaborator with industry throughout my career, doing with consulting positions, but also collaborative research at the university, students doing internships. So I always saw real value in that. It was always a strong part of me. In some ways, I think it made me an unusual academic. I was so motivated to do that type of work. But maybe it just goes back to sort of my upbringing. My parents were immigrants, and I always had a really pragmatic aspect, that I think led me to pursue that kind of collaboration. And then I'd been doing research and that type of collaboration for 20 years in this general area, digital communication circuits. And Alphawave was founded by people I went to school with, people I'd worked with right out of school for a while at a previous company, and my first job out of grad school. So they had a tremendous success there, getting Alphawave off the ground, getting it listed on the London Stock Exchange. And so many people, some of my favorite people that I'd worked with throughout my career were there and working in an area where I had developed this deep expertise over 20 years. So it was just a perfect confluence of factors that didn't feel like a big leap, didn't feel like a big change. It was very natural, working with people I'd worked with before, old friends, right in my wheelhouse, building a company. I mean, it was fantastic. It's been fantastic. Yeah,
that's great. It's exciting to hear. Even when you were teaching, you were award-winning papers author. Over 100 of those papers, and now with a public company doing like real impactful semiconductor products. Best of all, with an old friend of yours, right? And I think all these combined, like you're almost living a dream life right now. So what is the next challenge for you, and what's the next challenge for Alphawave, so to speak?
I mean, Alphawave, we're very big ambitions, absolutely. I think already it's absolutely fair to say that Alphawave is the largest semiconductor company founded in Canada since ATI Technologies, which of course has become the large AMD design center. And I remember when I was coming up through school and grad school, and that success up here in Markham was really inspiring, right? And as I said, now Alphawave is the sort of the second largest behind that, really. It's a Canadian success story in the semiconductor industry. And the next challenge is to eclipse that, really. I mean, we have that ambition. And for me personally, I just want to contribute to that. It's a large team. It's a team effort, great team, which, as I said, is part of the draw for me to Alphawave. But that's the ambition, right? We're not done yet. And I really want to do my part.
Well, contributing to the Canadian semiconductor legacy, it's very humbling. And to be honest, I think you're too modest. I would say Alphawave has achieved great height already. But it is, you never want to say stop. You always want to go for the next level, right? And I think that's very respectful. Let's talk about the Canadian ecosystem. I mean, you and I both spent many years in the Canadian ecosystems. That being said, we have a very small market. We always have to deal with whether it's on the supply chain side, on the channel side. It's always global. So how does it feel? I mean, especially when you have to compete with competitors down south in the U.S. market with a lot of capital, with a big market. Obviously, they have strong talent. We have strong talent too. So how does it feel? Does it concern you, or does it actually make you even more excited to go after it, to prove that like we can still be very competitive right here in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's just been really gratifying to see the growth over the last 20 years. I remember coming out of grad school, there really wasn't a lot going on maybe outside of ATI/AMD. There was, some other companies, but it's been a real renaissance of growth, I should say, in the last 20 years compared to back when I came out of school. There's so many options now. So I think that alone really is snowballing at this time. Again, when I came out of school, it was difficult to see for yourself a long path, a successful career with a potentially high ceiling trajectory that you could have staying here. But now that's just simply not the case, right? I think young people can see that there's a path there, that there's so much potential. I've got children myself that are at that stage that they're starting to think about their career journey, and so I know through their eyes, that there's a real path there. So that alone, I think, is making it easier, and it's really gratifying to see that change. As far as the competition goes, I mean, a couple things about that. I have a competitive nature, so absolutely, like I always want to win. That's a driving part of my character. I don't focus too much on the borders. I think that can hold you back. I think focusing on, we're in Canada, they're in Silicon Valley, that puts us at a disadvantage. No, I think that is just not productive. The focus is on making the best technology, making the best products, identifying a need from big customers, serving that need, and then doing it again and again, right? And I think if you're focused on that, I think the world, in a lot of ways, doesn't care, right, where that great technology is coming from, as long as you're delivering. So we have to think about, that we have that opportunity. We have every opportunity to succeed. And it's just about going out there and grabbing it. Now, when it comes specifically to starting, a VC-funded startup, sure, there's differences. There's differences in the Canadian ecosystem. I think the differences are not as big as they were 20, 25 years ago, but they're still there, and it is more challenging, right? I think it's even possible to deny that. But that's not the only path, right? So we've built a lot of companies in Canada in different ways, semiconductor companies that are not capital intensive at the start, and so which I think is great. That's our local ecosystem. That's our local character, which I think is great. There's pros and cons, and so I prefer to focus on the ways that we're winning, the ways we have opportunity, our unique benefits, and not get too stuck on, all the challenges there are to overcome. There's always challenges to overcome.
Great. These are great advice. To be honest, I hope some of the founders are listening to what you're saying here. Build great product, build great technology, focus on what you do best, and really play to your strength. And I think that these are time-tested advice that I think will work anywhere. For founders. Now, bring us back to ventureLAB here. We're the hot tech innovation hub of Canada. We have a lot of very exciting startups in the semi space, in the AI space, and also now in the medtech space, and among other things too. How do you see a successful company like Alphawave played into the ecosystem? We're both passionate about the Canadian knowledge-based economy. How can we work together to drive the overall success of that Canada knowledge-based economy? Is there anything that you think ventureLAB or organizations like ourselves should do and can do, or maybe do more with companies like Alphawave to make that happen?
Mm-hmm. I've always been really focused on talent development my whole career. It's obviously a big part of my background in academia. And I still believe that's a big driving force when it comes to technological innovation and the advantage of any region that any region has will be built on that in high tech. And I think that's an area where there's opportunity for lots of different parts of the ecosystem to collaborate. I think some of the most impactful things in my journey were my first jobs I had when I was an undergrad. My first job I remember was working in a hospital lab, wire wrapping circuit boards, right? Which is something you don't even do anymore, right? It's not really a commonly done thing at all anymore. But that doesn't mean that was a wasted effort or wasted skill I developed. That was a gateway to seeing that hardware, can really work. I worked on that for a total 8 months over 2 summers, and by the end of that time, I saw this piece of hardware that I'd spent hours putting together come to life on a screen, generating an ultrasound image. That was super, impactful. So the role of early career opportunities, internships, that's a place where you can see collaboration between academia, private sector, and even organizations like ventureLAB, I think, right, can play a role there. So I continue to focus on that. I think other things we can do is, again, continue to show people that there's a real path and a trajectory for success here in Canada. Whatever your success looks like, if it's, rising to the upper echelons of industry and to the boardroom, that's possible. Whether it's working on the absolute most cutting edge technologies in the world on the hardest problems, yes, that's happening right here. Whether it's, earning a lot of money, a lot of wealth creation, for sure, also possible. And the more and more examples we have of that, I think it snowballs. I saw that myself, that, some of the early successful startups in Toronto going back 20 years was part of the key spark that then led other people to go and see that was possible. Some of the people involved in those early startups then went and did it again, and started more startups, and that's how an ecosystem blooms, right? So I think, and that's why I think one of the most valuable things that Alphawave can do is to really succeed, right, and to show what it looks like when a small Canadian company turns into a global success.
Well, I mean, well said, success breeds success. And I think, just showing, being able to show all the other founders and ecosystems how it's like that it can be done, I think it's already very inspiring. And you also touched on talent development. It is, in general, a very well kind of talked about pinpoint in the Canadian ecosystems. And, on one hand, we, given the economy right now, there are obviously a little more people than before in the unemployment kind of group of things. But there are also people, companies, especially among the high-tech industry, finding very difficult to find talent. And we obviously have a role to play there. And I personally, for example, would communicate with the provincials and federal bureaucrats and politicians about what are the policies they can put in place to facilitate that. Now, beyond talent, are there any other elements in your view that you would like to see improving from the policy standpoint? Obviously, now we're touching a little bit about, whether it's a province, whether it's federal, to actually make companies like Alphawave or smaller companies, up and coming innovators, give them a better chance to succeed. Are there things like that you would like to see happening?
I think, there's always that funding gap that I mentioned before. It is harder to raise capital here, I think, still. So maybe there's a role there for facilitating that kind of access. I think what needs to be looked at there is the difference between a startup and a scale-up. I think there's a lot of emphasis, and rightly so, and romanticization of the sort of garage startup, which is great. But I think it's also important to recognize those startups that have some traction and really have the opportunity to grow quickly. And it's those companies that are going to make an impact on the regional economy. So if I'm sitting in government, it's one thing to fund a lot of two-person startups, okay? And that's good. I think that is happening. There's programs to support that kind of activity, which is great. But when you have a company that has a big customer and has an opportunity to leverage that into an even bigger opportunity, but all they need is to grow their team from 10 to 100 people, invest in some capital expense, buy some equipment, and then that's going to really that's a big impact. That's a potential for big impact. And we have to recognize those scale-up opportunities and make sure that they have everything they need, that they're unblocked from doing that. And sometimes it involves, it might involve a combination of foreign investment. Foreign investment's great too, right? It's literally money from outside of your country investing in your local economy, right? I mean, that's great. So when there's opportunity for foreign investment to come in, whether it's from a customer or anything like that, anything that can be done to make sure that it happens and to unblock that, I think is also great.
Yeah, I mean, we all love FDI, right? Don't we? And more money coming to Canada is always good. Now, recently, the world has been full of tensions. When it comes to trade, when it comes to a lot of geopolitical sensitive issues. How do all that impact Alphawave, and how do you see the whole industry is being impacted? Or maybe I flipped it around. What would be your advice to a lot of the startups and scale up too? You mentioned about scale up. They oftentimes require a lot more capital. The challenges isn't that much smaller. The risk isn't that much smaller at the same time. How do they navigate the world right now, given there's so many unknown geopolitically? And you can maybe talk a little bit about, only if you can, how Alphawave is navigating all that right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's rapidly evolving. So we could talk about what's going on now, and probably by the time this is posted, things will have changed, and it'll all become dated. And
well, then we'll see how accurate your prediction is.
That's true. So if you're a new founder in a startup, I mean, you have to take a little longer term view of it, and I think getting a little bit too focused on trying to navigate that right now, the current situation. If you're a startup, again, might not be the best use of your talent, your effort. It's just coming back to instead focus on making a great product that people are going to need, and just hit it and see whatever's in front of you and hit it as hard as you can. And it's going to take time, right? I mean, especially if we're talking about hard tech, hardware, technology, semiconductor industry. I mean, these are not 2-month projects. So, see it through, build a team to do it. And I don't think it's the right move to try and engineer a solution to the current political winds. I don't think that's how you build a high-tech, successful company from scratch right now.
I see. So it sounds like just focus on what you do best and just keep that competitive edge. Mm-hmm. The rest will take care of itself.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, if you've got something at the cutting edge of technology that's enabling, 2x improvement in the performance of AI, I think you can count on there being a market for that one way or another. You can count on people wanting to take advantage of that and willing to pay you to do so, right? So, and what that exactly looks like, sure, might be changing over the coming months, coming years even. But if you have something with that value, that's the hard part, building that. I think that, maybe it's me as a technologist, a lifelong technologist, but that's where I focus.
That's great advice. Also want to just probe you a little bit too, when it comes to technology. If we all, I like to pay attention to what's the latest development out there right now. With all the rapid development you see in AI specifically, what's your view? Obviously there are a group of people saying, AI is developing too fast. We need to focus a little more on responsible AI and ethic and all that. And another camp would say, hey, you know what? It's not fast enough. We want AI to, replace a lot of things that we do on a daily basis. That's kind of mundane in nature. What's your take on that? And how, does Alphawave, do you guys have a strategy to be part of that, to take advantage of that, or to even help drive that trend forward?
I'm personally super enthusiastic about the promise of AI. I use it all the time on a regular basis, and just really looking forward to the ways that AI are going to continue to basically help people to self-actualize, right? The ability to use a tool like that to multiply your effort really lets you unleash what's uniquely human about us, lets us focus on creativity instead of spending hours debugging code or waiting in line for something or whatever it is, right? Instead of doing all that, we can be doing those things that are really unique to us, that are inside us. So I'm super optimistic and excited about that promise. And yeah, absolutely. A large chunk of Alphawave's business now is around AI. We focus on connectivity solutions, and as AI gets more and more powerful, it's relying on ever more parallelized hardware. So you're talking about thousands of AI accelerators, whether you call them GPUs or LPUs or TPUs, or whatever you want to call them. You've got now hundreds, thousands of these accelerator chips working in parallel on a shared task, and that's moving to hundreds of thousands, and talk about even millions. So obviously, if you've got hundreds of thousands of processors that are trying to work in concert on one task, networking, the connectivity between them is a huge factor, and the demands on that networking and connectivity actually increase non-linearly as the number of accelerators grow. So it's increasingly becoming a bottleneck. And that's where, as I said, my focus has been my whole career. That's why I was, really excited about the opportunity to jump in and play a role in all that, play a really active role in all that. And already, as I said, a large fraction of Alphawave's business is in support of that growth.
Well, that's just great. Looks like Alphawave is right in the middle of that storm right now. Connectivity, it's key, in addition to all the compute power, the algorithms and data and all that. So like where you guys are right now. Now coming back a little bit to you personally, right? And, I think a lot of people know you, from your teaching time at U of T, now, being the CTO at Alphawave, one of the titan or unicorn in the semi industry, not just in Canada alone, globally. But who really is Tony? You talk about your kids, outside of all your research or your technical work. What's keeping you up? What do you enjoy the most right now?
Yeah, I'm really energized by what I'm doing, obviously, at Alphawave. I think whenever you ask me career-wise what's most important to me, it's at any point in time, it's generally what I'm working on right then. So right now, for me, for example, one of the exciting projects I'm working on is we received some funding from an agency called ARIA to work on a project called the Connectivity for Scaling AI. So it's really looking at that next generation. How do we get sustainably from thousands of AI accelerators in a cluster to millions of them, and what are the connectivity solutions specifically you need to enable that. So it's really cool to be part of a project like that with people from all over the world, experts in different aspects of the AI stack, and where we can bring our expertise on connectivity together with folks on the software side and folks on the underlying technology side. So that's I'm pretty jazzed about that right now. And on a more personal note, I've always loved sport and math really ever since I was young, but it turned out I'd only be 5'7", so sport never really was a long-term path for me, but I still love being healthy, and so I try to always make time for that in my life. And I've already talked a bit about my family. I mean, that's always the most important thing that underlies all of it. So passionate about that. It's great seeing my 3 kids turn into amazing people, and spending time with my wife.
Oh, that's great. You know what? Size of a person is never measured by his height. It's actually by the size of his heart. So I think all the stuff that you do, it's quite amazing, quite fascinating. And I think rooting yourself back to your family, your kids, and that's what's keep us square at all the time. And the same for me as well. We're living in a time where it's fascinating. As you said, AI is developing very, very quickly. Alphawave is right in the center of the storm, and you obviously outside of your work at Alphawave, you're also working with many experts globally now, also on the AI, on some of the software stack and all that. What is the next big thing? I mean, we've been talking about AI for the last 5-10 years. And what is the next big thing? I mean, people talk about quantum, and do you have a crystal ball? And let's say that we both have kids, right? Mm-hmm. They're really into engineering, they're really into science. What would be your advice for them? Like, where do they focus themselves?
Yeah, I mean, to me those are 2 actually different questions. Maybe I'll take the second one first. I mean, when I think about young people, and I've always loved working with young, smart people and, mentoring them. But always the couple main pieces of advice, high-level advice I always come back to with them is to think about, first of all, developing a valuable skill and getting really good at it. And I think, again, it's probably wasted effort to think about what's going to be a valuable skill 20 years from now. Because as you and I know, I mean, over the course of 20 years, your personal journey, your career can have many twists and turns, or will inevitably have many twists and turns along the way that you will navigate, right? But the main thing is when you're stepping into your career, whether it's coming out of school or whatever it is, that you're stepping into that with being very good at a very valuable skill, right? And that gives you your entry point and lets you hit the ground running, have an impact, develop your career, get opportunities, within that first role to grow. So yeah, don't overthink that. And then while you're doing that, while you're developing that skill, the second piece of advice I give, I think there's a trap that young people can sometimes fall into where they get overwhelmed by seeing all the things that they could be doing, right? And feeling like by not doing 1 or 2 of them, that they're not going to be competitive in the future. And I think that's probably worse now than it was 30 years ago, just because things like social media expose you to so many amazing things that so many young people are doing all over the place. And people think that they need to be doing all of them to be competitive. So the advice I give is to just, again, pick that one thing that you're focused on for the next 6 months, year, 2 years, and hit it as hard as you can, right? Just crush it, hit it out of the park, right? And then it's a long road, and that's hard to recognize when you're young, I think. then there'll be another thing that comes after that, and then do the same with that thing. And if you do that 3 times in a row, there's 3 big goals you have, like 1-year goals, and each of those you hit out of the park. You've established an amazing base for yourself to go do, anything you want. Whereas if in that first year you're trying to do 10 different things at once, you're trying to build up your profile in this way, and you're trying to work on this side project while you're also building up a thesis or something like that. No, you're gonna kind of have a mediocre outcome in all of them, and you're not gonna then be able to stand out in any way. So, those are what I tell both students and even what I try and instill in my own kids.
I feel like those advice would be useful for me as well. Love talking with you and. It is true. I think a lot of time now with all the information's overload out there, there's a lot of shiny objects, so to speak.
Right.
You can spend your whole life chasing them. The fear of missing out, it's also a big thing that drives a lot of people. But staying grounded, stay very focused on the one thing that you're passionate about, that you're good at. And hey, if the world changes, then you change with it. And I think that's a very, very good set of advice. Now, Tony, I've been asking you a lot of questions. I'm not a very interesting person, but do you have anything you want to find out about ventureLAB, about me, about how, maybe we can, perhaps work together in the future?
Yeah, I'd love to hear. I know ventureLAB does great works with, a lot of startup and young companies. And I wonder how you work together with, larger companies and what, opportunities you see there.
Well, absolutely. ventureLAB, we are a platform, we're ecosystem builder. I always make fun with my colleagues here is that, we like to talk about these latest, greatest technology, but we don't actually do any of those R&D, so to speak. It's the founders that we see every day, that we facilitate, that we help, that we support, that's really get everybody here excited. At the end of the day, what we want to see is the Canadian knowledge-based economy to get more prosperous. In the process of doing that, we need a lot of partners and ecosystem players to come take part. The one very strong partner that we absolutely need is the government. That's why I'm a registered lobbyist with the federal government. Oftentimes, we would speak with the politicians, speak with the staff and the bureaucrats about what are the pain points of the founders, or the ecosystems, and make sure that they have the right policy in place. Government has 2 very potent tools. One is it's funding. But you can argue that funding you can get it from somewhere else. VC you mentioned, and some other investors, strategic customers. But policy, it has to be by the government. So that's one very important partners that we always work with closely. The other one's academia. I think our founders, they always need world-class research, and sometimes world-class researchers end up being founders. So we want to facilitate and want to support them, we want to help them the best way we can. And then when it comes to the private sectors, we see them as a very important piece of the whole puzzle. The reason being that, they could play many roles. Number one, they could be the channel partner of many of our founders. They can also be business partners for many of our founders. They can also be strategic investors. And a lot of times, we do have MNC, large size, multinational company working with us. And people would say, hey, why would they want to work with companies like ventureLAB? Sometimes I would say, we're their best spend marketing dollars. A lot of times, they just don't have the business. It's not to their core business to spend so much time with all these upcoming founders. Whether they will be successful or not, only time can tell. But we are right there to help these founders to grow as a not-for-profit. So commercial success is not what drives us. We want to see these founders do well, and when they do well, and it will play very well into the ecosystems for these larger companies. For example, we are one of the VCA, and if not the only VCA for TSMC right here in Canada. And I think that plays a very key role for a lot of the founders in the semi space. We also have our partners of Sterling Industry, which is one of the largest medtech ODM in Canada. And they work with us because they see a lot of quality medtech founders in our ecosystems, and they want to work with them. They want to invest in them. They want to be their regulatory partners. They want to be their logistic partner. They want to be their manufacturing partners. So by putting all these stakeholders together, we're actually seeing a lot of synergies coming out. And that's the role we play. It's really a platform builder. And hopefully in the future, we'll have an opportunity to work with Alphawave as well. I mean, you guys have been the star really, in the ecosystem, not just in Canada, but globally. So really want to help, really want to thank you, Tony, for making the time today to come speak with us and also speak with our founders.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, and it's great to see all the things that are happening at ventureLAB, and hope you're able to keep doing all that you're doing and more.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your encouraging words.